Hello and welcome to Inspired Earth, everybody. I am super excited to bring you this week's episode. We've got a huge whopper to digest on this one. And before we get too far into things, I did have a couple things that I wanted to lead off with. And that, first of all, we talked about the Ecuadorian lost civilization that was found. And immediately after finding said lost civilization, the country was afflicted by a civil war, narco war type of situation. So prayers to Ecuador. And I had a slight little excerpt from Art Bell, who I have dedicated the podcast in the name of, as well as Ian Punnett. Both of them really inspired me to making this, as well as a lot of other people. But I had about a 1-minute little segment of Art Bell that I'm going to play that really encapsulates why I made this podcast. And I found it just serendipitously. It's from, let's see the date here, 2004, and we're going to play it now.
You ever wonder about the news? I do a lot. I wonder about it. I mean, I'm about to read you and sort of skim through the headlines with you a little bit, but it's never good. The news is never good. Has that ever occurred to you? Surely there must be good things that happen out there, right? But they don't get in the news. The news is always 100% assuredly bad. Now, why is that? Why is really good news not newsworthy, but really bad news? In fact, the worse it gets, the better, right? Is it something about if it bleeds, it leads? Well, it leads.
So that's pretty much the point of this podcast, is to show the other side of humanity and the other side of current events, our technology, what our minds can do. And that it's not all negative in the world, even though it can feel like that from looking at the news. And this is kind of supposed to be an escape from that. And so normally we won't talk about the military on Inspired Earth, but today's episode might be one of the few exceptions, and I will tell you why. Because of the statement that they made that is just so mind-boggling. And it's not about the purpose is not about it being a weapon or war or anything like that, where that's like not the purpose of me bringing this up. Although it's a component of it, it's something that we're going to try to be optimistic about and just hope for the best regarding that, and try to be optimistic and put love and peace intentions. But all right, so we're just going to go into it here. Enough dilly-dallying. And I made some art for this one. This is actually a circular space station based on the von Braun concept, which was, von Braun was one of the scientists that worked on Apollo, and he came up with the circular space station idea. And the circle helps with gravity in the inside of it. So with that thought, we're going to move on to the actual main event here. We're just going to go straight into it. And I put 2 rescues at the end. There was 2 miracle rescues, so we have 2 rescues to look forward to. And with the Pentagon, we have Pentagon moves to declassify secret space program technologies. And this was January 23rd, 2024. Which I'm almost speechless that they use that terminology, I would have thought that they would have come up with something else, and this is just full on public disclosure, or as close as we're gonna get to public disclosure, uh, for a long time, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. In fact, I easily could be wrong, because there's some hints later on that we'll get into. But as for the currently, I would say that this is a massive step forward, and basically public disclosure, or just short of it. It's as good as public disclosure as we're going to get, as them coming out and saying secret space programs. It's nuts. And here we go with the DoD, Department of Defense, wants to declassify space programs to boost the nation's military edge in space. The world is investing in the militarization of space, and to that end, the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks recently approved a new policy that will reduce the classification level of some highly secret space programs and technologies. The policies that have prohibited sharing this information are outdated and are holding back the U.S. when it comes to superiority in space, according to DoD Assistant Secretary for Space Policy John Plum. What the classification memo does, generally, is it completely rewrites a legacy document that had its roots 20 years ago, and it's no longer applicable to the current environment that involves national security space, Plum said last week. This policy does not mean that these programs and technologies will now be fully unclassified and revealed to the public. Instead, it will lower their classification levels in order to share some technologies and programs with the private industry and international allies to help the U.S. build asymmetric advantage and force multiplier that neither China nor Russia could ever hope to match. And I don't know, that's a bunch of military jargon. One can agree with that and disagree with that. That's not really the point of this. The point is that they're saying that they're disclosing the technology, and it's not going to be public, but they're trying to tell people within the military what the military is actually doing. And we'll get to some interesting parts of that here in just a second. And I don't know why every time I click it changes. Sorry about all the clicking. It just went to a different page. Okay, so all right, in order to share that, so they're going to be moving that to the technologies to the U.S. Armed Forces to decide for themselves the own classification levels. So each branch of the military will be able to pick what technologies need to be declassified for their service members, appropriate to each service branch, I would assume, which seems really complicated and arbitrary. But it says this is where it gets really interesting. One of the key issues driving this policy change is what is known as special access programs, security protocols that severely restrict the sharing of highly sensitive and classified information. Some of these SAPs, special access programs, are acknowledged, meaning that their existence is known to the public, but there are details that haven't been revealed, and there are others, however, that are unacknowledged, meaning that their mere existence is even a secret. And I'm guessing that some of these SAPs will not be acknowledged even to some of the armed service branches, that they will remain above even them possibly. And so we're only seeing some of them go down, I feel like. And that this is not, well, I mean, it basically says that. And it says that Plum argued that the new policy will remove SAP status from some of the Pentagon's most valuable space programs, keyword some, not all, giving the U.S. military an edge in what the DoD now considers the most essential domain in terms of national security, which we will skim over that here in just a little bit. Anything we can bring from an SAP level to top secret level brings massive value to the warfighter, massive value to the department, and frankly, my hope is over time it will also allow us to share more information with allies and partners that they might not currently be able to share, which we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But so what is below all, he just talked about like different levels of access to this information. And what is below all of these different levels of access? The public. The public is at the very bottom of all of this. And we have absolutely insane technology out there that we're paying for that we don't have access to and is mind blowing. And they want to use it all for weapons and don't want anybody to know about it, because they want to use it as a force multiplier, which again, we're not really talking about the politics of that. We're just kind of talking about the technology of it. But some officials at the Pentagon have been calling for such new classification policy for years, arguing that excessive classification has prevented advanced military capabilities from deterring attacks from adversaries, which is one of the main reasons that they were created to begin with. So that's a really crazy statement. And to backtrack slightly, he's basically saying that they have crazy technology and it's so classified that they can't even prevent attacks from adversaries. So we got people flying around in space looking down at us being attacked, and they're not allowed to, they don't have permission to help us. And that's a mind trip. That's, you know, like, and they apparently they want to help us. Some of them do want to help us. In a rare show of disclosure, the U.S. Space Force and National Reconnaissance Office revealed a set of general capabilities of the Silent Barker Watchdog satellite, launched by United Launch Alliance in September 2023, which really wasn't that long ago. Before the launch, NRO and Space Force officials told the public that Silent Barker was designed to keep an eye on satellites and spacecraft in geosynchronous orbit. The disclosure was designed to help deter attacks on U.S. satellites. So they released that technology just as a deterrence. So they don't want to release any technology unless, I guess, they have a reason to, militarily, quote unquote, reason to. Not only are we going to maintain custody and ability to detect what's going on in GEO, geosynchronous orbit, but we'll have indications and warnings to know there's something out of the normal occurring. That goes a long way towards deterrence. So, I mean, that makes me think of some alien stuff too. If you're talking about the government observing geosynchronous orbit, or basically anything in orbit, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. But it says, the exact capabilities and specifications of the U.S. military intelligence community satellites remain unknown. As well, we're going to be talking about this here in a little bit too, but it might not even all be satellites. Like, they have crafts. They have full-on crafts up there. Who knows to what extent, but they have at least some. That's for sure known fact publicly that we're going to talk about here in just a second. But if they're talking about it publicly, then chances are there's probably 100 or 1,000 times more quantity or advanced technologically that we don't even know about. And that's what this article is basically talking about, is that we have a secret space force program, secret space program. And let your mind run with that, because it should. I mean, this boggles the mind. Let's move on to this other article, Interesting Engineering. That was Yahoo News. This is Interesting Engineering on this same topic. And basically copy and paste article, except at the very, very end, it talks a little bit more about the membership. They talked about cooperating. Here we go with a Plum with a Department of Defense International Space Cooperation Strategy aimed at facilitating joint military space operations among the U.S. allies and partners. As part of this initiative, the Pentagon has already expanded the membership of the Combined Space Operations Initiative from 7 to 10 countries. During the CSPO's most recent meeting in early December, the DoD announced that Italy, Japan, and Norway have been added to the initiative. So we're spreading this technology around, and I don't know, this really sounds like some Star Trek type of stuff. We have all these different countries coming together into the Combined Space Operations Initiative. I mean, boy, 2024 is starting off with a bang. We're not even through the first month yet, and we have Pentagon declassifying secret space programs to boost the military edge, and that 20 years ago was no longer relevant. I mean, 2024 to 2004, they're talking about post 9/11 type area. That's interesting. And here we go with space.com. With earlier, the DoD mentioning that space is the most essential domain for the U.S. military. Pentagon, DoD, conflict is not inevitable in space or anywhere else, and the United States of America is committing to preventing conflict through deterrence. Oh, that was a mouthful. Committing to preventing conflict through deterrence. And to that end, I guess is what this is all about. But here we have something that I have highlighted. The United States, Hicks said, is only interested in space-based warfare capabilities to serve as a deterrent or as a warning that American orbital assets are not to be messed with. So they talk about orbital assets. That could be satellite, but there's more to it, and it hints at that later on in this article. But I want to be clear, Hicks went on, conflict is not inevitable in space or anywhere else, and the United States of America is committed to preventing conflict through deterrence by making clear to our competitors that the costs of aggression would far outweigh any conceivable benefits, which are, once again, arguably, it kind of has its logic, but it's got big holes in it. But we're not here to talk about the logic of deterrence today. That a lot of other people have talked about that and have dedicated time to that. You can look that up. You should look that up. That's a very big thing because it controls a lot of our policies. So deterrence is a huge thing, but that's not the purpose of this. We're just talking about the technology, and I keep on emphasizing this because it's easy to slip into that sort of mindset of like we're doing that, they're doing this type of thing. That's not the point of this. This is just the technology of humanity that needs to be exposed to the public, and that it doesn't have to be all war type of stuff. That's just what they're emphasizing. This is the angle of the military that we're hearing, so that's why it's all military-esque. But let's just continue. During a ceremony, Vice Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff Christopher Grady added that space is now the most important domain in which the U.S. military operates, brought into focus by recent conflicts in which space-based assets like communication satellites and GPS systems have paved a pivotal role. So yes, GPS has paved a pivotal role. However, I'm thinking that they're not all talking about satellites here. That once again, we're talking about orbital craft that is the next topic that we're talking about. So to counter such threats, the Space Force has been conducting training exercises in recent years to simulate an on-orbit combat, and has been expanding its capability to keep tabs on threats in space, both known and unknown. There you go with the aliens. Meanwhile, the Pentagon's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, better known as DARPA, which, infamous, recently asked private companies to submit new ideas for space weapons. Yeah, giddy on the space weapons. All in the name of peaceful deterrence, of course. Yeah, we need the space weapons for peaceful deterrence. So I'm glad that this space.com article points out the irony in this in the last sentence. You know, the author did a really good job of saying a lot with a little there, of having this whole article about this and then ending with the sentence, all in the name of peaceful deterrence, that we're doing all of this, if you can believe that. So, quickly, we will move on to the orbital crafts, or at least a orbital craft that can stay in air in the orbit for years at a time. It already has more years in flight than it has takeoffs from the ground. And here we go with the U.S. military's X-37B robot spaceplane. The secretive X-37B robot spaceplane has blasted off from Florida on its 7th mission, the first launched atop the SpaceX Falcon. On a previous missions, there is no one aboard this reusable spaceplane, which resembles a mini space shuttle and carries classified experiments. The launch came 2 weeks after China's robot spaceplane, known as the Shenlong or Divine Dragon, was launched on its 3rd mission to orbit since 2020, adding a new twist to the growing U.S.-Sino rivalry in space. The Pentagon has disclosed few details about the X-37's mission, which conducted by the U.S. Space Force under the military's National Space Launch Program. Thursday's launch marked the 7th flight of the X-37B, which logged more than 10 years in orbit since its debut in 2010. The last flight, the longest one yet, lasted 2.5 years before ending on a runway in Kennedy a year ago. The Pentagon has not said how high the spaceplane will fly this time, but in a statement last month, the Air Force Rapid Capabilities Office said mission number 7 would involve tests of new orbital regimens, experimenting with the future of space domain awareness technologies. The X-37B also carries NASA experiments to study how plants are affected by prolonged exposure to harsh environments of radiation in space. The ability to cultivate crops in space has major implications for astronauts nourishing during future long-term missions to the Moon and Mars. So we're going to find out how seeds are affected in space. It's very interesting. It's no surprise that the Chinese are extremely interested in our space plane. We're extremely interested in theirs, according to remarks by Air and Space Forces magazine. So on the note of crafts being in orbit and flying around, here we have Pentagon ex-UFO chief says conspiracy theorists and government drive spending, blames core group of government workers on this whole thing, and he says that Sean Kirkpatrick is who we're talking about here, and he says that the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which my comment on the All-Domain Resolution Office is it has resolution in the name, so they're giving themselves away right there, is that it's supposed to resolve all of these sightings and experiences. It's not supposed to be investigating them and getting to the truth of the matter and what people are actually experiencing. It's about resolving it and soothing it and quelling any sort of dissent or any hint that something could be going on. But they failed. And I think that he's kind of sour about that. That's my opinion, is that he got given a job that was not possible. You can't put the lid back on this. Even though he wants to, he tries to. In this article, in this podcast, it says that this is part of a claim from a podcast, and that he was the first director of Arrow. And it was set up in 2020 to collate military reports of UAP sightings and to be more transparent about what the government knows. So they basically came out and said that it was nothing, and he's saying that a core group of secret government UFO programs are being circulated by a few people, and that nobody really knows anything, and that basically he's saying, okay, this is where it gets really weird if you like actually break this down and analyze what he's saying. He's saying that there's a conspiracy within the government by people in the government to create a conspiracy about aliens. That's what he's saying. And to what end? Why are they doing this? And he's saying that these conspiracy theorists within the U.S. government are perpetuating myths about the UFOs that millions of tax dollars are spent looking into. You know, you got to really think about that for a second. The audacity to come out and say that there's nothing to any of these sensor experiences or sensor data, radar data, pilot experiences, whether it be military or commercial or private. You know, pilots see weird stuff in the sky. People on the ground see weird stuff on the sky or in the sky. So that doesn't have any, you know, some of it might be ours. Some of it might be ours. And I think that he was kind of hinting at a little bit of that some of it could be ours. And I totally accept that. I mean, we were just talking about that they have crafts up there. It might not all be alien. He might not even know about it. It sounds like it's so compartmentalized and classified that he doesn't even know about it, and that he will probably never know about it. But I think that he's sour that he wasn't able to quell any dissent, and that he wasn't able to do his job effectively at all to resolve the anomalies. He did not resolve it. People are still talking about it. And here it says, Kirkpatrick, I declined to identify the people by name. The actual conspiracy is being carried out by a group of true believers themselves to get the government involved in the business of investigating aliens. You've got to talk to people who come in and tell their story, or tell the media or other people come in, but it turns out none of them have any firsthand evidence or knowledge. But that's not true. We have the pilots that experience these things. We have people that have filmed it. We've got so many people. That's just not true. And he's not being genuine with that sort of statement. What his team was able to deduce, Kirkpatrick said, was that at least 90% of the record UFO sightings, including some of the evidence, videos of military encounters declassified by the Pentagon in recent years, have a perfectly logical explanation. Some of that might be our craft. So I think that's what he's hinting out there. It's basically a religion and a religious belief that transcends critical thinking and rational thought, which I feel like critical thinking and rational thought, that you would just be willing to look at the phenomenon and the anomalies and not just try to resolve them. That's the religion. Is the religion of having somebody tell you the way that it is instead of just going out and experiencing it. Yeah, I can get in a whole rant about that, but when he says 90% of the recorded UFO sightings can be explained logically, yes, a lot of them can, but there's a lot that can't. And The ones that can't need explanation and not ridicule, and to authentically look at the things that are going on. And when we have Tom Cruise, Top Gun fighter pilot, come out and say that, hey, I filmed some stuff and his plane has the recordings of it and all the sensor data, and that his sensors were being jammed, that maybe we should listen to that, and that they're flying over our nuclear bases, so all right, we'll just move on from that into the Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp documentary that just came out. And if you guys haven't checked this out, you have to. I'm going to be looking more into it, and we'll talk more about it in the future. I just wanted to tell people about it so that they can look at it and analyze it and think about it, because I'm going to be thinking about this for a while. I want to kind of hold back what I have to say slightly until I hear some more and see some more. It's exceptional. It's different. It's out there. I don't know what words to say about it. It's one of the most different UAP videos that they've released. It's definitely the strangest. And to just quickly describe what it is, maybe like a scaly blob type of thing. People have described it as a jellyfish because a jellyfish has the head type, bulbous type of head type of thing, and then the like tentacles hanging down. And that's kind of what we're talking about. It is called the jellyfish UFO, jellyfish UAP, and it's from military video from a combat situation in Iraq. And like I said, it seems like with the jellyfish, you would think of the head or the crown of the jellyfish. On this thing, it's kind of elongated downwards, and it looks like it's scaly and hard, and it has like a lot of tactile stuff going on around it. And then the legs or the tentacles, as you would with a jellyfish, are some sort of like robotic looking. It reminds me of a lobster, of lobster legs, like a lobster flying through the air a little bit. But it doesn't look like a lobster. Just the legs, the way that they curl to me. But it's freaky. It's kind of freaky. This is like not the friendliest looking UAP I've ever seen. I mean, not to say that it's malevolent. I mean, we don't know. I mean, it just looks different, and it looks scaly and spiky, and yeah, that's kind of it. It makes me think of an ocean creature, and that's what other people were thinking too with the jellyfish thing. It's ocean-like, and which is very, very interesting. So here we have leaked U.S. military video shows jellyfish UAV hurtling over Iraq as troops were told to hunt it down. And we've seen that before. Also, we have pictures here. I'm sure Jeremy Corbell would not mind me showing this. And he says that it was real and buried by the intelligence services. The flying object can be seen switching from colors to black and white as it glides over military bases. And here, they're going to talk about here in a little bit about the video spectrum, the light spectrum that the video is being taken in, which is important because that gives you an idea of the energy that it's putting off, as well as its capabilities of cloaking, you could say, or hiding itself, or stealth. We call that stealth, right? We don't really use the word cloaking like with our craft, because it's not exactly what it does. We're talking about more stealth, and yeah, that's could be what we're talking about here. According to the filmmaker, the eerie object allegedly went into the lake and stayed underwater for 17 minutes. So we were talking about water, and it went under there. Then it came out and shot off into the sky at an angle of 45 degrees. Corbell said it goes over a body of water It stops on a dime, descends stiff into the water for 17 minutes, and boom, comes out of the water and shoots out. And that witnesses told the investigator that each of the hanging legs were stiff and weren't moving, and the soldiers went with night vision equipment that couldn't detect the UFO unless they used thermal stratum. So they couldn't see it with infrared. That's really, really interesting, because this is the fourth time that since I've been counting, of the military disclosing that they're experiencing craft that have infrared blocking technology or cloaking technology. The object that got shot down over Lake Huron had been fired at by an infrared seeking missile, and that did not hit. Those missiles, they had to fire multiple of them. And there's been other ones. I'd have to sit there and think about the other ones, but and that he was afraid for the source's safety for getting it to him, is what Jeremy said, and that many witnesses have corroborated it, and that the object had geometric forms resembling scale armor. The filmmaker then went on to claim that the UFO made incursions into Pantech's nuclear facility. So we were just talking about them going over nuclear stuff. Something that happens that appears identical to these moves between these nuclear silos. The investigators also stated that the footage was filmed by the intelligence agency and was buried. The expose comes as part of Corbell's documentary TMZ Presents UFO Revolution. That is incredible. And I hope that everybody goes and reads the rest of this article. Watch Jeremy Corbell's and George Knapp's documentary. It's incredible. I'm going to go and watch it some more here in just a little bit, and I'm going to talk about it again later. I'm actually filming a reaction video to George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell right now. I'm excited for that. I've been planning it for a couple weeks. I just have so much stuff planned, guys. I have so much content. I'm backlogged until infinity. I just work so much, and I need money. But I'm really excited to bring this stuff to you, and I'm excited to have finally started my podcast, and I'm just super excited, and I can't wait to bring you guys more. And we're gonna start rounding it off here with and here we have two of the rescues here. We have hunting dog rescued after falling 85 feet into Georgia rock quarry, and that they were hunting, and at 7:50 a.m. man called the dispatcher and told him that his dog had fallen into the quarry in Elbert County, and that the dog was alive after the fall, and that a bunch of people came. Elbert County Emergency Management, Elbert County Fire Rescue, Elbert County Sheriff, and that using ropes and ladders, they made their way down to the dog and were able to rescue it, and the dog had no obvious injuries. Talk about a miracle, almost 100-foot fall, and the dog is like A-okay. Man, that's a stout dog. He is, whatever they've been feeding him, they got to keep on going and give him an extra serving that day. Man, okay, so that's just an absolute miracle. It's so great to hear that he wasn't injured. And here we go with another miraculous rescue. Pregnant woman rescued from rising floodwaters by helicopter crew. And it says that the floodwaters came in and she went into labor, because isn't that how it always works, right? And she is trapped in her home by rising floodwaters on Sunday, and that paramedics were unable to reach the woman safely due to the road flooding, and they have pictures of that. I'm going to scroll down here in a second. Woman's neighbor, who's a veteran, provided initial care until the helicopter could land. So thank goodness. And here we go with the pictures of the helicopter landing and the road being flooded. And if you notice, the sky is bright blue whenever the helicopter's landing. And that is the thing about flash floods, people, is that if you're south of the rainfall, that water's coming to you. Water runs downhill. So wherever downhill is, that water's going there. So she's obviously downhill of wherever this water's coming from, because the storm is north of her. There's, like I said, there's blue skies. So it's crazy that they can have flash flooding to the point where they can't even get to you, and it's not even storming in your area. I mean, thank goodness. Otherwise, the helicopter wouldn't have been able to land. But the weather conditions were good. It says, due to weather conditions, the woman was flown to, looks like a rescue base, where she was then met by paramedics and driven somewhere else. So, what an incredible story with the rescues. And I hope that you guys enjoyed today's stuff. I know it was a little bit different, but that was just nuts. I mean, secret space program coming out. That just, I guess I can talk a little bit more about that before we close out. So where is NASA on that? I'd like to hear a reaction from NASA. What do they know? And how long have they known it? And how much is real at NASA? And how much is not real? It brings in all of these questions, and I'm not a flat earther by any means, but one of the things that flat earth people talk about is that NASA's not telling the truth. And I think that this right here, Pentagon approves declassifying secret space programs, says that NASA is not telling the truth. I don't know. That just blows the whole thing out of the water. And like I said, I wish we could have NASA talk about it. I guess that we can't because it's still classified or something. But we have all this crazy technology, and we don't have access to it as the people that are funding it. And that's what a lot of this stuff is about in Congress and the Senate with the disclosure effort. And a lot of people like that don't follow that, that are public and aren't into UFOs and sci-fi and science and technology, like the people listening to this obviously would be, but they ask, what is the point of disclosure of aliens? Why is that a big deal? Why is it something that they should care about whenever they're going to have to pay their bills and pay their power bill and their rent and work all day long and not be able to afford to go to the doctor or go to school? And I know that I'm like mainly talking about America here because other places in the world don't live like that, but that the place in America, that is how people live. And even people outside of America, they are still asking themselves that, of why is it important to me for aliens to exist or not exist, or to have spacecraft in orbit and all these advanced energy techniques. And the point is that we do not have to go to work and suffer and toil the way that we previously have thought that we would. This is the moment that we can change our mindset and open our eyes to the fact that there's so much technology out there. We don't have to go without those things, and we don't have to we don't have to go without. And this is the evidence that it's out there. We need to demand access to the things that we've paid for. And so the point is that we shouldn't have to pay crazy amounts for rent and crazy amounts for power. And we should be able to have access to healthcare. I mean, we have the technology to do it. Plain and simple. And that it just comes down to that for me, and that the world is crying out, the earth is crying out for change, and we have all this technology to do it, and we get hit over the head by the sensationalism of media that tells us the opposite, or to be afraid of this person or watch out for that, and all this fear mongering. Like, that was the point of the whole thing at the show, at the beginning of the show here, was that they have the negative sensationalism in the media, but there is so much more to life than that. And whenever you start changing your mindset of what is out there, that when you look at the sky and you remember that we have crazy stuff up there with crazy energy, and that and that there's scientists inventing stuff all the time that change everything. So that's the point. And and as well about the aliens is that a lot of them, I feel like, have gone through similar stuff, and that they're not all necessarily bad. Some of them might be, but let's look at ourselves for a second. And that, why are we so greedy or self-serving? And that's because we have evolved on a planet where we had a lot of scarcity. And let's say that, just hypothetically, that a species evolved on a planet that didn't have that level of scarcity. They might not have the same mindset or philosophies and stuff as us. They might be a lot more collective minded. They might be insects, and that might not be a great thing. But that's probably like a fraction of them, like a small fraction. The majority are probably have evolved to the point to where conflict is contradictory to moving forward. All that you're doing is beating yourself down with conflict and aggressiveness and war. And I think a lot of species will realize that as they evolve, and the higher technology you get, the bigger the risk is of being aggressive and suicidal with your policies. So not everybody might not be like that. And it's kind of naive of us to project ourselves onto all of the aliens of the universe to say that they're colonizers and that they're evil and that they're going to come in and take us down and fight us and make us slaves or food or whatever. Because as their technology becomes higher, they realize that violence is counterproductive. So technologically they reach a point where they become peaceful. And I think that that's the majority of species in the universe, and that they all work together against the few that are not peaceful. The few that are not peaceful are probably a massive threat to the few that are, or to the majority that are peaceful. And frankly, the majority of our problems on this planet come from us. And I don't think that they come from aliens, or that aliens are coming here to destroy us. I think aliens want us to get it together. And that's primarily the point of this as well, is that good and evil is not unique to our world. And that there's probably a lot of aliens that are nudging us towards awareness and waking up. And one could say even a revolution, which is interesting that Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp use that term. That terminology is way deeper than maybe even they realize, but they're tapping into something really, really deep. And they are, I'm sure that they're aware of a lot of it, and I want to tell them more about it, but it's kind of forbidden to talk about. But yeah, I'm going to wrap it up here today, and I really appreciated it, guys. I'm looking forward to more, and be hanging on for more content to come out soon. And oh, I almost forgot. I have some art that I'm going to put at the end of here. that is inspired by what we're talking about here, with the spacecrafts, secret space programs, and it's just some stuff that I made. I can't even really say I made it, but I put it into an AI generator, and it's very unique. It's not unlike other people's stuff. So I know AI art is kind of controversial. I just do it for the fun of it. I'm not trying to be deceitful and tell anybody that it's anything but AI art. It's AI art, but I think that it's cool, and I hope that you guys enjoy. So that's what's coming up.
There's something in the water. I feel it taking over me. It's slowly getting harder to breathe, to breathe, to breathe. And I don't know what's happening. How did it come to this? I saw danger on your lips, and I took a sip. You got me paranoid, love that I can't avoid it. Your kiss tastes like poison. My heart has been destroyed, and I know that you'll enjoy it. Watching me sip your poison. You got me paranoid, love that I can't avoid it. Your kiss tastes like poison. My heart has been destroyed, and I know that you'll enjoy it. Watching me sip your poison. And I don't